Get ready for an action-packed episode today. We are covering so much content. There's a lot of great value in today's show, and you're going to learn from my mentor and friend, Patricia Norins. Now, before I introduce you to her, I just want to share what we cover in this episode. There's so much great stuff in here. So we talk about goal setting and a specific method that Patricia's been using that I've also been using because of her, that has helped both of us achieve our Q1 goals early. We talk about accountability and the power of positivity. We talk about success tips for working with your spouse. Patricia has been married for over 20 years and has built several successful businesses with her husband. And so she talks about that experience. And I also ask her, what's the secret to their marriage and lasting for so long? We talk about riding tandem bicycles, which is a fun little conversation. And then I also ask, what is the future of retail? Patricia is a fourth generation retailer. She has so much background and education in retail. So we have that conversation because obviously the retail landscape has definitely changed. And I think it's going to continue to change. So we talk about that. I also ask for her advice on how you scale a business, and she gives a system to doing that. And we talk about what that word scale means and getting really clear on what your vision is and where you want to go with your life. We also talk about social media. We talk about how it's great from a marketing perspective, but this is a little bit of a different conversation where we're talking about Patricia's 18-year-old daughter, Abby, who uses social media frequently. We talk about the platforms she uses, how she uses these tools, and what the challenges are being a parent of a teenager in our very connected social media and digital world. So really great conversation there. And then we have some things sprinkled in between. I know you're going to love this episode, but first, let me just introduce you to our guest, Patricia Norins. Patricia is a fourth generation retailer. She likes to say that retail and entrepreneurship are in her blood. She started her career with an apparel chain, the youngest manager in the company's history, and also worked in her family business operating carts and shopping centers. Patricia launched 2 retail trade publications, one in the gift industry, Gift Shop Magazine, and one for specialty retailers, a global trade show for specialty retailers, and created a professional training program for specialty leasing professionals. She sold her company to ISCS, which stands for International Council of Shopping Centers, in 2013 and stayed on for 4 years to grow the assets globally. After that, she launched Blue Butterfly, and I would love to tell you a little bit about Blue Butterfly as well. Plus, I'll link to all this on the show notes page. Blue Butterfly helps companies to grow both retailers and property owners. They help them scale their business through identifying and securing exciting new locations for their store, both permanent and pop-up locations. And they work with companies to develop and implement strategic plans to increase sales and profits. Half of the work they do is real estate based, negotiating on behalf of their clients, and the other half is strategic strategy work. Blue Butterfly clients range from Fortune 500 companies such as Hanes Brands to entrepreneurs. So get ready, grab something to drink, get comfortable to listen to this episode. You're going to learn a ton. You're going to be inspired. One of my favorite things that Patricia says in this podcast, in this episode, is don't just be good, dominate. And we dive into that and more. So I'll see you over on the episode. Hello, I'm Crystal Vilkaitis. I'm a curious, wine-loving entrepreneur who loves to learn and have open and honest conversations. Join me and my amazing guests as we talk about all sorts of relatable business and life stuff. It's my goal that you'll have fun, learn something new, and get inspired. Wine is not required, but is recommended. This is Crystal Uncorked. Patricia, welcome to Crystal Uncorked. I am thrilled that you are here. You have no idea how excited I am for this conversation.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here with you today and to see your podcast coming to life. We've been talking about it for a while now, so to actually be here on your podcast is amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
In fact, I think we should toast to the launch of your podcast.
Okay.
Cheers to it.
Cheers. Whoop.
All right.
Okay, what are you drinking? We have to know. We got to start there.
So, as much as I wanted to bring as much as I wanted to bring wine to today's show, I have to be honest, I suffer from migraines. And so today I've brought a really special beer with me. We have a local brewery in our town called Untold Brewery. We live in a cute little coastal community right in a town called Scituate, and we're about 20 miles south of Boston. And this amazing brewery comes up with really cute little names. This one is called Coastal Glow. It's an India Pale Ale, which is one of my favorites. And they have really cute graphics and artwork, and it is absolutely delicious. There's a lot of undertones of fruit, and so I really love it. It's perfect. Today we're having an unseasonably warm day here in March, so it's perfect for the weather.
Oh my gosh,
what do you have today?
Delicious. You know, so we're like opposites because I love beer, but beer does not love me. So I'll have it occasionally, but I get stomach aches versus migraines. So hence, Crystal Uncorked. I'm actually doing a bottle that I drank on episode 4, I think, but it's a white wine, and I didn't want it to go bad. We're not a big white wine family, so I'm totally having this when I talk to Patricia. Plus, it is like almost 1 o'clock here, so I didn't want to go for a big, bold red during the middle of the day. So good. I love that can, and I have had the opportunity to be in your town with you, which was such a special weekend. We did some amazing brainstorming together. Such a cute town, and I actually want to take things to the beginning of when we first met. I'll never forget it. I don't know about you, but that jewelry show in Atlanta. I mean, you asked me that question. I shared this on episode 4, 2 big things you helped me with, but that question of how big's your list? And I'm like 50,
Boy, have you come a long way since
Oh
those
my
days.
gosh, a long way. And then after that, that was such a game changer. We just sat at that round table real quick and did a power brainstorming. It was the first time we met. And I called you afterwards, was like, do you want to be my mentor? I'll work hard. And you thankfully said yes. And we have actively been mentoring since 8 or 9 years ago, which is really cool because I feel like a lot of people might mentor for a year or 2, but I feel incredibly lucky to have spent all this time with you. And episode 4, I talked about budgets and knowing your numbers. That was a huge thing for my business, hands down. That is so part of goal setting, right? It all goes there. So now I've been so structured on, okay, how much membership are we selling? Get listed clients, our speaker fees, all the things, and budgeting everything, and then reverse engineering those and creating our campaigns and creating all of our goals. And this year we have been working together on our goal setting for your business and for mine, which has been really fun. But you have kind of a new approach to goal setting that's pretty neat, and I think our listeners would love to hear about it. So do you want to share what you're doing this year?
Awesome. I would love to. So just a little bit of background on goal setting. I've always been really interested in setting goals. It's been something that I've done for my business since the beginning. I started out as an entrepreneur at a younger age, and really ever since I can remember, I had goals, and I put them up on a bulletin board or up on my wall, and would strive to hit those goals every year. So it's always been something that's been near and dear to my heart, and I think an important formula or piece of my formula on how we've been able to successfully grow multi-million-dollar businesses over the years.
Yeah.
But I read a book this year, and I'm actually going to hold it up for anybody who's joining us on video. It's the 12-Week Year by Brian Moran and Michael Lennington. And it really did shed some new perspective for me on goal setting. And, we went through it, and both of us decided to kind of take the jump and go for it. But basically, the book talks about creating a vision. And that's kind of the first step on creating your goals. And so they say in the book that it really should scare you at first. And I know that you talked about this on a prior podcast. And I always had that mentality. but I really adopted it in a new way. So I'll kind of go through some of their philosophy, and then I'll talk a little bit about how it applied to me.
Love it.
And, why it's scary, part of why it's scary is because there's this huge piece of uncertainty that we all have in our minds, right? It's kind of like, oh gosh, let's see, maybe this year I want to double my sales, but that's going to mean doubling my marketing expenditure. Or, hey, I want to open up a new store and add store number 2 to my portfolio this year. But, what if that store is not successful? And we kind of go into that mentality of, everything that could go wrong. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of what we need to do as entrepreneurs. But what he says in the book is that that's really your amygdala talking, a part of your brain that's helping you to manage risk. So a lot of times entrepreneurs will have that uncertainty and stop there when they're thinking about growth because they're so afraid of the risk and their brain is intentionally holding them back. But he goes on to explain in the book that if you access your prefrontal cortex, and I know this sounds kind of techie and I'm putting my psychology geek on just for a moment. I was a psych major and so I love this, but I think the more we can understand about the brain, then we can hack it and really understand how we can work to its strengths instead of letting it hold us back.
Right.
So anyways, he then goes on to say that if we really stretch ourselves and we think about where we're going to go and our greatness that we can achieve, then our prefrontal cortex lights up. And the amazing thing about that is it kind of counteracts what's going on with all that fear and risk in the amygdala. And then he doesn't explain this in the book, but again, with my psychology background, I also know that when we throw in using logic and decision making and planning, we're accessing our frontal cortex. And that also goes against all of that fear that we have with the risk taking. And so you basically, if you can picture the greatness you're going to achieve and you keep practicing that, and then you think about, okay, let me logically go through the fears that I have and like one by one kind of counter those. Okay, so you know what? Maybe there is some money at risk here. Maybe it is going to cost $20,000 to, do what I want to do to grow my business. But you know what? I have that in my account. I've set that money aside to, for this growth. Nothing's going to happen. Worst case, we lose that money. And then you kind of go through that logic. Or maybe you're nervous, you have, a big store grand opening and you're worried about the consequences for that. And sometimes it just boils down to creating a plan. So long story short, he challenges us to really get creative, think big, let it scare you at first, but then manage that with thinking about the greatness you're going to achieve. And then I'll add in with the logic and the decision making.
Love it.
And then he goes on. Yeah, it's really powerful stuff.
Right. Well, it's amazing because our brain, the whole fact that our brain is just trying to protect us, but it's really keeping us small, right? Like not letting us live into our full potential. So what I love about that is think big, visualize it, walk through those steps. What's the worst that can happen? That's something that when I started my very first business, somebody asked me, well, I was thinking about starting my business. I was scared to quit my job and I was like 21 or something. And he's like, well, what's the worst that could happen? And I'm like, I have to go back to working at Chili's and I might need to live with my dad for a bit. And he's like, okay, can you survive that? And I'm like, yeah, I loved my job at Chili's. He's like, all right, then what are you waiting for? So to kind of just go through those, what's the worst, can I handle, and then just move forward. I just love that. It's very freeing.
Yeah, it really is. And acknowledging that, fear can be part of the process.
Yes.
We all have that. That's innate. That's natural. And there was something, I think, to your point about feeling freed from the fact that, like, I'm not a bad entrepreneur because I sometimes have some fear around taking those growth steps. That's life-saving. That your brain is kind of asking you to question those risks. But the more you practice using the greatness and logic and decision making and all those things, then the more you're less concerned about uncertainty. I think at this stage in my career now, 30 years into being an entrepreneur, uncertainty can occasionally creep up, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I just need my plan. Or, oh yeah, like, worst case scenario is this. And then you're able to release that in maybe a matter of moments, where in the past it could have been days or maybe even a huge obstacle holding me back.
Right. Totally.
Something I wish I could have told my earlier self. I know I really, really struggled with uncertainty. In fact, I have this really funny journal entry that I did like 25 years ago about, like, if I could just know the future, then I could move forward. But we don't need to know the future to move forward, because it's okay. We're going to plan for all scenarios. And as long as you've made that plan, then you can move forward and, again, release some of those fears.
Oh, amen to that. That's so
Mhm.
critical. And even just, I mean, I don't know if you remember this. One of our first coaching calls, I was afraid of bringing on a team, like
Mhm.
hiring somebody and spending money, and you were like, celebrate writing big checks, and then I was afraid, what if it doesn't work out and I had to fire them? And you're like, told me a story about how you had to fire somebody. It ended up being a really good thing, like, so it's just crazy though how all those what ifs come into our brain. And to your point, they are good. They do help. They can help us, and we just got to make sure that they don't hold us back. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it.
And I think maybe I had an oversimplified view of things a few years ago where maybe I kind of boiled it down to look. At the end of the day, I used to think all entrepreneurs have either a fear of failure or a fear of success. And if we can just get through those hurdles, we'll be in really good shape. And so with a lot of the retailers that I've worked with over the years or entrepreneurs, we worked really hard on kind of which fear feels right for you.
Right.
And let's remove that as an obstacle. But I think that the fear actually goes deeper than that. And so in reading this book, it kind of brought to light that, you know what, we just have a lot more fear than that of all these little uncertainties along the way as entrepreneurs. So the more we can just again, identify that that's there and then understand how to counter it. To me, it's just a helpful tool to have in the tool belt.
Totally. Now,
Yeah.
something else with this book, it really approaches your planning from a quarterly base, right? Versus looking at the entire year, hence the title, 12
Yeah.
weeks. So, speak to that a little bit because I feel
Yeah.
like year-long planning for me feels really hard. I don't know. So much can happen in a year, and how can I really say where we're going to be in a year? I still do my yearly budget and I'm checking in on that, but there's this whole, method to this 12 weeks. So share with us.
Yeah, totally different mindset than where we had been, right? The traditional model is that in, at some point the prior year, maybe it's November or a little earlier, October of the prior year, you're thinking about the next year and you're kind of like, okay, here's where I went for this year. Here's my history. If you have some history and, generally we have a 10% increase every year. We'd like to plan for that again, or maybe you up it a little bit to get more aggressive if you've got some growth taking place. But the challenge with that, he proposes in the book, is that it could be holding you back. Every year you're kind of just stuck with a number because that's the number you've been using historically.
Right.
Furthermore, he says you put these numbers down on paper and then you're all geared up and fired up the first couple of weeks of January and sales are starting to happen, but it's easy to kind of feel like you have the whole year to make your numbers. So maybe you kind of take it easy a little bit in January, maybe even in February. Then by March, you're like, uh-oh, I'm falling behind a little bit. And then you're scrambling and things don't feel great. And then worst case scenario, let's say you get to the end of the year and by like October, you're like, oh my gosh, my numbers are way off for the year. Then you can lose quarter four because you just really not gauged the plan properly. So there's a lot of lost time on the old mindset of budgeting for the year. Again, from just arbitrarily picking a number out of a hat to losing a lot of time at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. So he says, throw that all away. I want you to create this amazing vision that scares you at first. Then you come to terms with it, you make a plan for it, and every quarter you're going to chip away at that vision. And you're going to create a little mini plan for quarter one, and then you're going to do it again for quarter two. And what's great is you're going to measure along the way, so you know how you're doing. And like you said earlier, you're going to reverse engineer it. So you go with your plan for the quarter, then you say, okay, what's my plan for each month in there? And then what's my plan for each week? And that made a whole lot of sense to me as I read the book. And I'm like, wow, we could be losing tremendous amounts of precious time by working this way. And worse, beyond that is maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars or more by working this way.
Right.
So I love what he has. And the only thing that you and I have added in is, you know what, let's still do a budget for the year just so we can kind of get a sense of how the big picture works. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But what I love is that we're really taking that quarter and putting so much priority on it and focus. and driving it forward.
Totally.
So it's been great.
And with that being said, so when we're filming this, we are just about a week away from closing out Q1, but this will go out after Q1. But how's your Q1 going?
So I am thrilled to report that at this moment in time, we've completely crushed Q1 and exceeded our goals.
Yay!
How about you? Where are you at?
Woo, woo, woo. We have also exceeded our Q1 goal.
All right. Woo, 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 woo.
Cheers.
Yeah, you know what? Cheers to that, right?
Yes.
Woo! Thank you, Q1 goals.
I love it. I love that whole system and that approach to goal setting. I still like knowing the year, like you said, it's nice that we have that. I like to have that, but it's been really great. I think part of, and I don't know if this is mentioned in the book or if this is just something that you and I have really done for a long time for me, but now we're kind of doing it with each other, of the whole accountability aspect. Does he talk about accountability in the book?
He totally does. And there's some fun research that he shares that I thought would be fun for today's show. So I want to bring it to the audience. Basically, he reports that there were some studies done with patients who had severe medical conditions, and they required lifestyle changes in order to manage these medical conditions. And so when patients are told they need to make these lifestyle changes, on average, only about 12% of them make the changes, even though they're life-threatening. Wow. However, when there's a peer group in place, the success rate goes to 80%. So your chances are essentially 7 times greater when you employ peer support in what you're trying to accomplish. And I thought that was pretty mind-blowing because I think it puts some research behind what I've always believed, that it's so important to not go it alone in business. And it's lonely at the top, right? I mean, you and I have talked about that, as a CEO and as somebody running an organization. Now I'm not the sole person at the top. I have a business partner, but regardless, it's really helpful to have other people who are walking in the same shoes and going through what we're going through. And we can, compare notes and learn from each other and hold each other accountable.
Yeah. And know that I'm not crazy. That's how I felt.
You're not alone.
I feel like I'll come to Patricia and she just she's been there before, or, sometimes you just feel like you're going through stuff and you're so alone and you're crazy or you're emotional or you're just all the things that you feel. And then you have somebody who's like, girl, this is what I did. It's like normal, but that's crazy. 7 times more likely if you win the peer group. I mean, that's amazing.
Powerful. It's powerful.
Yeah. No kidding.
He also shares a quote from this gentleman by the name of George Shin, who owns the Charlotte Hornets. Okay. And I love this quote. I thought it'd be fun to share today. He says, George Shin says, "There's no such thing as a self-made man. You reach your goals only with the help of others." And I think that that's so true.
Yep. Absolutely.
We can all look back and say, you know what? These are the mentors in my life that I've learned so much from. And they've helped me incredibly. And, sometimes it's authors of books, sometimes it's podcast broadcasters, and sometimes it's, fellow people in a peer group, in a CEO group, and sometimes it's our mentors and coaches. So I think all of that, anytime we can be learning and sharing with each other and holding each other accountable, it's super, super an important piece of the formula.
Oh my gosh, completely agree. Hands down, I would not be here at all if I didn't have a massive community, and that includes all my podcasts and the books. I like to think they're all my friends and I learned from them. But you've been such a big part of that for me, which has been so amazing. And I want to share, we've got this fun little thing that we're going to do. So once Crystal Media hits a milestone, which is the $1 million milestone in a year, Patricia and I made this pact that a few years ago, that once that happens, we're going to New York City, which is my favorite place. She's in the Boston area, outside of Boston, so not too far. And we're going to celebrate and open a bottle of champagne and just enjoy our time. And hopefully we can report later this year that that's happening with pictures of us in NYC and it's all safe to travel and everything. But that has been on my mind. That's an example of accountability, right? And we have this celebration at the end of it too. And I think that's something that's so important, is that when you are hitting those goals, you do celebrate. So easy to be like, cool, did it, on to the next, and really making sure that you have celebration. So
I'm glad you're hitting on that point because he does talk about that in the book too. And I am not in any way affiliated with the book, even though it sounds like I am. I'm just really excited by it because I felt like it really kind of broadened my horizons on goal setting, which, like I said, is so near and dear to my heart. But he does talk in the book about at the end of that 12-week period, you're in week 13 essentially, or the week 1 of your next cycle. That week, taking a moment to really pause and look back at how did the prior quarter go, what was successful, what didn't work, and did I hit the milestones that I set for myself, and really being candid with yourself. And in fact, he encourages people even once a week and then monthly to be measuring and monitoring and meeting with a peer group. But for sure, there should be some time spent at the end of that quarter. And even he talks about, they do a week retreat in their company and go, celebrate if they've hit some big goals. So it is important to pause and celebrate because it's so often we're like, oh, we hit that. And then it's like onward and on to the next thing. But it's important to really savor those moments for a bit.
Totally. Yep. Okay. That's awesome. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Unless there's anything else that you want to share from this book that you're not affiliated with, but
I think maybe it's important to just sort of like on a final note, wrap up how did the book impact me?
Yes.
So I think it's a really good reminder that we can all set goals that are really good, right? I mean, they're like, okay, yep, those are good goals, but it's kind of like, let's focus on how do we get to the great. And that's for me, like there's an important distinction between the two.
Yes.
And again, I keep mentioning a lot of quotes, but I heard a quote recently that kind of tied in with this book, and it said, "Don't just be good, dominate." And I was like, "Whoa, yes, right." I mean, it's not just about like, hey, you know what? If I could just beat sales by like 2%, like, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's, that's good,
right?
But you know what? What if you could be extraordinary or amazing or dominate in your category?
Yes.
How do you set those goals and hit those goals? So that was kind of a reminder for me on the book. And then I think also too, it just really helped me not only in my business, but even in my personal life. So I've been doing some training, and I've actually recently lost 20 pounds. So it's been exciting. And
awesome.
Thank you. And so for a long time, I trained in the same way. And through this book, I was like, you know what? Maybe I need to do some new goal setting on my personal fitness goals. And so in the past, I always thought, oh, I'm a long distance runner, but I could never be a fast runner. Like, that's just not who I am. Plus now I'm 47. There's like, when you're getting older, your knees and you're this and you're that. And I had all these obstacles that I didn't even realize I was putting into place. And so through the book, I was like, well, what would my vision really be for running? Maybe before my vision was like, I hope to be running. And that's a good goal. I hope to, this year I'm going to run 3 days a week. And, that's been my goal for a long time. And that kept me physically fit. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But how do you really push forward on making progress? You really need more specific goals that challenge, where you want to go. So I had this vision in my mind of like, what if I could shave 3 minutes off of my mile time for a 3-mile run? And what if instead of looking at myself as like, I'm an okay athlete, like I am an athlete, I'm powerful, I'm strong, and I'm going to really push on these goals and, kind of take it to that next level. So it's been exciting because I have already achieved my goal that I thought would take the entire year. And now in Q1, I've hit my running goal that I've set for myself for the 3-mile run. And, I've changed my training. So I was training in a zone called Zone 3, which is known as no man's land or the gray zone. And I didn't realize that that's not the zone that you make progress in. Oh. And I think that there's kind of an analogy there with business. Like sometimes we can just be cruising along. And again, there's nothing wrong with training in Zone 3, right? It's okay.
Right.
It's not great. So Zone 2 is kind of a place where you're teaching your body to use the glycogen stores differently. And I don't want to get too, into details, but anyways, long story short, I put in a lot of zone 2 training. I've been maxing out on my heart rate and going really hard and just making all kinds of improvement also on my biking and my lifting. And so, really pushing the needle. So I just can't say enough about, setting that vision that really inspires us. And again, not only for work, but whatever else we want to pursue in life and going after it.
I feel like there's a book in your future of talking about fitness and business, like marrying.
I love it.
Yeah, that I could so see
Love
that.
it.
I just want to cheers to you and your amazing success with what you're doing. And that whole don't be.
So anybody can do anything. I mean, I've always thought that is like really all things are possible.
Yeah.
I used to say with, creativity and perseverance and determination. But I really do feel like that's not just like, now I'm not just saying it anymore.
Right.
It's like in reality, you can think really big and then get a plan together to make it happen. And you don't have to use like all these things that could be, really try and remove what could be holding you back.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think too, sometimes people struggle with thinking big. So that whole don't be good, dominate, or, that if you allowed yourself to think, okay, how can I dominate? Like asking different kinds of questions instead of just like, I'm going to think big today. That can really help you visualize this world for you, which I mean, I know in our email exchange preparing for this podcast interview, we talked briefly about visualization and kind of like the manifestation of things. Like, I really do believe if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. I believe that if you can't see, you got to see it to believe it. And it's really amazing what you can bring into your life, but you do have to see it. You do have to believe it and set yourself up through different systems of scheduling your environment, your accountability group to really achieve those, those goals. And I agree with you. Anybody can do it. You really can. It doesn't mean it's easy. Let's be honest, right? I mean, there's definitely challenges, but yay. I am so glad that you're just crushing it on the business and fitness side of this year, which is amazing. Now, we're going to switch gears a little bit because in your previous entrepreneurial world, when you owned your publications, and even today, you work with your husband, Adrian, and you guys have been married for over 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
we're coming up and celebrating our 25-year wedding anniversary this summer, and 30 years together, which is incredible. I can't even believe it.
Oh
That's
my gosh.
insane.
How is that? Wow, 30 years.
How is it possible, right?
Yes. That is so awesome. So Dustin and I don't work well together, like in a working fashion. We're great together as a couple. When we work together, it's very challenging. So I really am fascinated by couples who can work well together. Do you have a few tips for success that you could share with me and my listeners about working with your spouse?
Sure. Well, first, I want to start with full disclosure that when we started working together, he still had a job at a publishing company, and I had started our publishing company, and he was helping me on nights and weekends. So we kind of started out in a part-time capacity, and we thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is great. We worked like that for a couple of years. Our own publishing company was growing, and we really hit a period of time where it was like, gee, it would be really great if Adrian could help out in a more full-time capacity. So he gave his notice and he joined. And then I have to tell you, 2 weeks in, I was like, oh my gosh, not only is this not going to work out from a business perspective, but we are going to get divorced over this. This is a nightmare. What did we sign up for? I am positive he was thinking the same thing. We were coming home and just, yelling at each other and fighting. And we found it to be really challenging. So
I had no idea.
In some ways, I'm thankful, though, that those first 2 weeks were really rough because it forced us to kind of sit down and say, hey, now that we're working together full-time, that looks very different than working together part-time. So let's create some boundaries. Let's create some defined roles for one another. This is what I'm going to handle in the organization. What are you going to handle in the organization? So we don't have overlap. So we all, each have our own responsibilities. let's talk about how we're going to support each other at meetings. So we created this rule where, let's say I disagreed with him, then we were very, very tactful in how we would say that in front of our team. So it might be like, oh, well, that's a really interesting point, but maybe, we could also look at it this way instead of saying, like, no, I hate that idea. That's terrible. We would never do that.
What are you thinking, idiot?
Right, exactly. And then as time progressed, we actually had a lot of employees who would come to Adrian and ask him a question. If they got a no, then they'd come to me, almost like little kids do with their parents. So we also agreed pretty early on that we would support each other. It's like, if you make a decision that's a no, then I'm going to support that, and vice versa.
Awesome.
So I think, and also communication was really, really key to us as well. So it's like, hey, if you're ever struggling, if you're ever upset about something, like, let's not let this brew inside. Let's talk to each other in a way that, we can articulate what we're feeling and support each other, but get it off of our chest so that you're not sleeping with that night after night and letting that build.
I love the honesty of just how hard it was in the beginning. I didn't realize that. It's so easy to look on to people, right? Like, for me, it's just so easy to look and see and think everything's merry and great. And obviously you guys work through it, and it doesn't start out great, but I really do believe some people are just not meant to work together with, I think that is kind of me and Dustin. But I do want to say, I'll never forget something you said when you were in San Diego for a conference, and we were talking about Adrian, and you're like, he's just so cute. I'm just so attracted to him. I just love my husband. Like, you were just so like sharing how you're just attracted to him. And I could just see the love and joy and being together for so long and having still that passion for your husband, which, like, my parents were together for 21 years, but divorced, and it was never great, really. So it was so cute to see that. And after building businesses together, you guys have been together for a while. Dustin and I talked about this on our episode of what we think, makes a long lasting relationship. Do you have any advice or tips, what you think has made you guys work so well and for this length of time?
Yeah. Well, I love the tips that you guys shared. You guys were adorable together. I think that really for us, it's about supporting each other through thick and thin. So, I always feel like for Adrian, maybe I was more the visionary on our prior business. And I've recently had a chance to sit down with him and really thank him for supporting me and what my dream was and being part of that dream and coming along on the ride with me and helping us to achieve growth through his commitment to my vision. Yeah. And then it was funny because the next day he came back to me and he said, you know what, I want to thank you for supporting my vision on where I wanted to go over the last 5 years with our real estate. And so I really think that we are supporting each other in our vision, not only from a work perspective, but also from a personal perspective. Right. So sometimes he says, hey, you know what, I want to head up to Vermont and do 2 days of mountain biking in the woods because that makes me happy. And at first it's, when he would do things like that, I would be like, oh, don't you want to spend like every waking second with me? I don't understand. Why do you want to go be your own person? But I realized that that's created a very healthy marriage for us, is that we have our shared interests and some of the things that we love to do together. We support each other, but then we also have some time where we're doing things apart. So, maybe I'm out in the garden for hours and I don't see him and he's not like, hey, why aren't you coming in here? He supports me in that gardening dream that I have every summer. And I support him on his 5 types of biking that he loves to do.
Yes, love it. 5 types? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yes.
There are 5.
No joke. Our garage looks like a bicycle store. He mountain bikes, fat tire bikes, road bikes. We have an indoor bike, and he has a racing bike as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
a lot of biking.
That's a lot of biking. Go, Adrian. That's awesome. How fun. No, like, motorcycle biking though, right?
No, this is all powered by his legs.
Yes.
In fact, last year he rode 5,000 miles. So he rode from Boston, like, not in reality, but like he could have theoretically ridden from Boston to California and then almost back home again. That's how many miles he did last year.
Wow. That's insane.
Pretty crazy.
How cool. What an accomplishment. Yeah. That's really neat.
It's fun. He loves it. It's his, passion for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to support that.
I love it. Don't you guys do tandem bike riding? Haven't I seen
Oh
that?
my gosh, I forgot. We have 6 bikes. We have a tandem bike. Yep. And people tell me I'm nuts because he's the one that gets to be the taller person, sits in the front, and he is the taller of both of us. So he has all of the access to the brakes, and that does make for some crazy rides. Occasionally, I'm saying a few choice words from the back, like, "Can you effing slow down?"
Yeah, I'm sure.
As we're really accelerating down a mountain in Vermont.
Oh my
But
God.
we do have a lot of fun on it, and that requires, I mean, that's like the epitome of teamwork. You know, every pedal you're taking together. And what's so amazing is, like, the first ride of the season is always terrible. It feels really wobbly, and I scream at him because he'll stop a few times and he doesn't tell me he's stopping. But like a month in, there's this intuitive thing that starts to happen. I know somehow he's going to be stopping. Like, not because I see a car, but I feel he's going to stop.
Oh.
I feel he's going to accelerate. I feel he's going to change the cadence. And it's bizarre how you start to read each other's minds and you get so in sync. And I think this is going to sound really corny, but a beautiful metaphor for our marriage. Anyway, now you're making me blush.
I love that. Oh, I love that. It really is, though. That is really beautiful. And just to kind of have that alignment, I mean, it's true. You guys are in sync. You're one on that bike, and you've got to be. Otherwise, somebody's getting hurt. Probably you.
Right. Except for the times that he tells me, are you eating bonbons on the back? So that's our ongoing joke, is that I've got my feet out. We clip in, too, with our shoes.
Oh.
So he says, are you clipped out and you're eating bonbons back there? And he screams that back to me.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, eating bonbons.
Yeah. Yep. That's all I'm doing back here. You know, it's funny you say that. I'm not kidding. Dustin and I went to Hawaii once, and we did a kayak excursion. So I was in the front, he was in the back. I don't know if that was right, but that's just what we did. And it was really choppy ocean water. And I'm loving it. I was having the time of my life. It was hard, but I'm like, yee, like, this is fun. But I was like, oh man, this is hard. And I'm like, oh, are we going together? I'm feeling like we're not going anywhere. And I look back at him, no joke.
Come on.
Sitting back.
Come on.
He's not crossed, but he's like this.
Yeah.
Not
just
moving.
relaxing.
Not moving his arms.
He got tired. He didn't feel like continuing.
He's just
taking a break,
hanging out, enjoying the water. While I
Wow.
am working my ass off to get us to and we're way in the back of the whole pack of everybody. We're way in the back. So if you ever go kayaking with Dustin Pizer, put his ass in the front because he's not going to do anything.
Now we know.
Yeah.
Now we know.
Now we know.
Adrian may not want a tandem bike with Dustin.
No, I would never. I would never do that. That would be terrifying. Oh my goodness. Okay, so going back onto the entrepreneurial world, you have such an entrepreneurial life. Like, before we started filming, you said how you started your first publication when you were 14. And I joked because I was a dishwasher at the Love and Oven when I was 14. So I was working, but I was not starting businesses. But you grew up, your family is entrepreneurs, and I know that your uncle has been very influential with you. I think everybody has, right? But specifically your dad and your uncle, there's a couple things you've learned from them that I would love for you to share with me and the audience.
Awesome. Well, first I'll say that I am a 4th generation retailer and entrepreneur. So I do feel somehow, in our family jokes around, somehow there's entrepreneurship in our blood and retail in our blood, because I'm also a 4th generation retailer, which is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah.
When I think nobody knew that my great grandparents first opened up a department store when they came here. And when I did some family research, it was like, oh my gosh, like, this really is in our blood, because my grandparents had a department store. Then my parents did retail. So it's pretty neat how it's been carrying on through the generations. Yeah. But I did start my first publication when I was 14. I've always loved publishing. And it's been neat growing up with parents who were publishers, because dinner time conversation was what was happening in the office. So my brother and I were blessed to, really hear firsthand. And they really believed, like, we're not going to hide anything from the kids. We're going to let them know, like, hey, this month's tight from a cash flow perspective. Hey, we're having an employee issue. Hey, guys, what would you do in this issue, with this issue? Or every year they had to go for their line of credit for the bank, and, they talked to us about that. And so it was extraordinary to have that opportunity. We call it like the College of Entrepreneurship, taught by my parents.
Totally.
And then my aunt and uncle were also are also entrepreneurs, and so to have them as an invaluable resource too. And while my dad and I've got two tips I'd like to share with my dad and my uncle. I do have to acknowledge that my mom and my Aunt Rainey were hugely helpful on so many things as well, but we just don't have time today to go through all the lessons. But my dad was a huge proponent of the power of positivity, and just day in and day out, he was such a positive person, and that was so important to him. And I remember when I was younger, I would sometimes get out of bed, and I definitely was not a morning person when I was a younger kid, and that did not sit right with my dad being, so positive. He wanted to start the day out right. And so occasionally he would say, like, you are super cranky today. I want you to go back in your bed, and whatever side you got off on today, I want you to literally get off on the other side. And and this wasn't just like a joke. Like, I literally had to go back into my room and get out on the opposite side of the bed, because not only symbolically, but he felt like physically going through that would like create a mindset shift,
Right.
where it would kind of like reset things. And it just was inexcusable to be negative in the house. Like, he just always believed there was a solution to every problem or any challenge, and encouraged us to be super, super positive. And then he also believed in the power of intention. So one of his favorite books was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And part of the premise of that book is really putting it out there. Maybe this is slightly more spiritual than Napoleon would have said, but gurus have followed in his footsteps to say, hey, when you put something out there to the universe, then you can manifest it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also part of the power of putting like your numbers in writing and your goals in writing. Is it's just on another level. Like, instead of just thinking it, you can think it and put it in writing. It's like another layer of putting it out there to the universe.
Totally.
So anyway, from my dad, I really feel that that positivity seed was cultivated at a super young age, along with manifesting your intentions.
Powerful. I can't. So it's interesting, that book, I haven't read it yet. I need to, which I feel like everybody talks about it, but you are the third person to talk about that book in the past week for me. So that is definitely need to read that book. Mm-hmm. But just I love my dad, and he might watch the show, and I love you, Dad, if you watch the show, but he is not a positive person. It would be, he can be, but it's a different mindset for sure. You and I grew up with very different dads who had very different mindsets. Just yesterday, I'm not kidding, just yesterday I said to Dustin, thank you for being positive all the time, because I can sometimes get in a I can make things harder than they need to be, and everything is great in my life. Like, I'm very happy and things are going really great, but I'll catch myself like complaining in my head or thinking about negative stuff, and could it be the way I was raised? Possibly. But I'm able to get out of it. But to have somebody around me all the time who's positive, he instantly makes me he'll sing a song or he'll do something silly, and I'm able to lighten up a little. So what a blessing to have that.
Positive people are awesome to be around, and it's definitely infectious. But I think the neat thing about positivity that I've come to realize is that it's something you can condition yourself to practice more. So, let's say you start to have some negative thoughts, then you can catch yourself on that. And there's some thinking that you can actually wear a rubber band around your wrist. And every time you have a negative thought, you kind of snap it to represent, like, I'm snapping myself out of it, just like my dad used to make me get out of the bed on the other side. Until you realize, like, your goal for the day should be to not snap that rubber band.
Right.
And so, maybe we all have some occasional passing thoughts. It's kind of like in meditation, we're all trying to not think about anything, right? I mean, maybe that's possible. Maybe some days it's not. Being kind and forgiving to ourselves is also important. But, ideally we want to be as supportive as we can. And so I think over time you can condition yourself to have less negative thoughts. Then, it's sort of like the art of practicing gratitude. There's like this art of practicing positivity.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the better you get.
Absolutely. I'm going to do that. I'm going to wear a rubber band. I'd be curious.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you on our next call. Do you have your rubber band?
Exactly. Okay. Hold me accountable. See, this is how we work. Okay. What about your uncle?
Yeah. So my uncle had this motto that he used to say over and over again, and it's like it's fully ingrained in our head. My husband and me. He said, it's just as easy to think big as it is to think small. So why not just think big? And that's invaluable, right? Because when you're hearing that day in and day out, you realize that what, it's really not that different of a mindset,
Right.
and it's just as easy. So we had that beautiful motto to try and practice, and we're really thankful for that.
I love that. I'm going to write that on my whiteboard. I tend to
Yeah.
think big. I am more of a bigger thinker than small thinking. What will happen to me sometimes is if I'm not even close to the big vision, then I'll feel like, oh, what are you thinking? Why did you believe you could go that far? Like, oh, you really were way off. You're setting yourself up for failure. Don't think so big. And it's about timing too. And also can go back to kind of the manifesting aspect of it as well. Like I've been studying manifesting a lot this past year, and we won't go deep into that because that could be like 5 hours long in itself. But one thing that I learned is that you just have to get really clear on the feeling of what you want and why you want what you want, but the timing is not up to you. And so I can be kind of impatient, expecting this big vision to happen right away. And that's just so not the case. But I have people like you in my life that allow me to still think big, and not get so down if it didn't happen right away, and then still celebrate what's good that did happen still, and just really know that it's stepping stones. So what a great family. I'm sure you learned a ton. I'm sure that was really hard to pick a couple of things, but thank you for sharing those, and for passing them along to me over all of these years. Very lucky to get that entrepreneurial blood, through our calls. I always feel like, and I want to say that I think women don't do this as much. And I don't know, that's just my thought. It could just be what I think, but we don't often like brag about ourselves to the point of, oh, I didn't hit the really big goal and now I'm upset. And it's like, well, but you did this and that's really great. Let's be excited about that. So I think it's important to look at those moments. We talked about celebrating, but also just being proud of yourself and recognizing that. I went to a women's conference once, and the very first thing they did is they had everybody stand up one by one and share what you're proud of. And I was like,
I love that.
I know, I loved it. Mine was actually embarrassing. I'll actually share this real quick. Because I was like 22 and I just started my business and I was making no money and I had no idea what I was doing, but I got invited to this event because I always networked and they were trying to help me. I think, it was all these really successful women, and it was an elite networking group of women. So go to the country club, I sit at a table, and that's how they start their event. And I'm at the table that goes first. I'm the third person I'm the third person that has to speak. So lady number one goes, I have no idea what anybody says because I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Mm-hmm. So lady number one goes, lady number two goes, I stand up and go, I'm just glad I got out of bed today. And I just start crying. And lady number two gets up and hugs me. And I hear a woman in the back go, we've been there before, girl. Just like so much love and support in the room. Like if you're going to cry at a business networking event, that's the one to do it at. But they, I couldn't think of anything else and I couldn't fake it. So I was just honest. And out of that, I actually got 2 clients. They just wanted, it was amazing. They wanted to help. They did some coaching and it was great. So anyways, with all that being said, I would love to hear from you. What is one of your proudest moments about your professional career, whether it's big or small?
Well, this kind of ties into what you're talking about on your last podcast. And when I was hearing it, I'm like, hey, I think this might be one of the many reasons why we connect so much. But really, what's so important to me and what has, kept me motivated, or a big piece of what's kept me motivated over the years, is every time a retailer sends a note or an email or gives me a call and says, hey, I heard you speak at this conference, or hey, you did some coaching for me 2 years ago and as a result, here's what's happened for my business. Or, I got one letter from a gentleman that I had, he was a client. He did some advertising and exhibited at our shows for years. And he's just out of the blue, he sent me this note and said, I just have to tell you what a difference your company has made to our family. You've helped us put food on the table. And so it's those things, I actually have his notes saved, and I just have some of those memories of people coming up to me. And like you were talking about, it's like, you just hope to, when you speak at a conference, regardless of how many people are in the room, if you can just make a difference in the life of one person, you feel like you've done your job for that day.
Right.
And so I think I'm most proud of just feeling like I love giving. I love entrepreneurship. I love business. I feel like I've never worked a day in my life because that's how passionate I am about entrepreneurship and business. Yeah. And so if I can pass on a few nuggets of information that helps somebody to grow their business and put food on their table for their family, or, I can share my passion and they have that same kind of passion because of me, then that's what gets me excited.
Yeah.
Every day.
That's a big impact. I mean, you've had a lot of impact on so many people, and just to I love that people are reaching out and sharing that. People don't always reach out, right? And sometimes you come across people and they share stuff and you're like, really? That's so great. But I mean,
people are busy and I get that. But when they do, that's what makes it so special for sure.
Exactly. I know. I love that. I have a testimonials folder that I keep everything. Even if somebody's just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Good job. Because if I ever have a bad day, I go right to the testimonial folder.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Just read through. Okay, so speaking of retail, what is the future of retail?
Yeah. So listen, I really believe from the bottom of my heart that physical retail will survive the test of time. And why is that? Because I do believe that we all have this desire to want to discover new things when we go out shopping. We want to touch things. We want to try things on. And the online shopping experience has come a long way. Right. But in my mind, it's never, ever going to replace that experience we get of going in a really cute shop and finding a really cute pair of earrings that were custom made by a local artisan, and then having the gift shop owner talk to you about that artisan, and maybe the gift shop owner recognizes you or even refers to you by your name. Right. Wraps them up for you because you're giving them as a gift. And, and then you kind of browse around the shop. They've got great little music playing and you really enjoyed your time in the store. Right. So, in my opinion, physical stores are always going to be part of the equation. And what's neat about omnichannel retail is that online supports physical and physical supports online. And I actually had a couple of stats that I wanted to share. 96% of people who buy from a retailer's website also have a desire to visit that retailer's physical store. Wow. So the overwhelming majority of people, yes, they're buying from that retailer online, but they also have a desire to go into store as well. And more than 50% of shoppers said it's important for a retailer to also have a store in close proximity. So long story short is, they want that store experience. I know for me, I do. And, I think it's always going to be part of the retail landscape.
Yep. And I totally agree. I think that it is a hobby for people that experience something to do. They do want to touch and feel and experience. And I do feel like retail is going to change, and obviously has changed. And I think that there's a bigger opportunity for independent retailers than there is for big box. To your point of they recognize you, that service, they know the artisan, they're wrapping it up, and it feels like home, almost like going into these stores. A big box has to work pretty hard to achieve that. It's just different. Yeah. And
it seems most today, it's not about that customer service experience. That art has kind of gone away from the big box stores. Right. And I think there's a huge opportunity for the smaller independent stores to compete on that level for sure.
For sure. I completely agree. Yep. So I do think it's going to look different. And I definitely do think e-com is going to grow. We are seeing it grow. We're seeing more independents sell online now. And I think that can be just an advantage to your business. It's just another way. Like you said, it's omni-channel. You have another way for customers to shop with you now. So you create convenience. But I agree. I don't think that's going away. And I think it's actually a beautiful opportunity for independents right now. So
Definitely. And I mean, I think the independent stores who are able to take advantage of the opportunity to shift some of their business online and, like you said, use that channel. And then also, maybe in the past, some of them were not fully leveraging marketing, but I think we're seeing more and more independent retailers understand how to use social media to grow their business and grow their sales. So, more and more are getting into that. And I think that'll also be an important piece of their success as well.
Right.
Moving forward.
I totally agree. Now, on that same point, let's say that there was a retailer or even a small business that just was ready to scale. Like I kind of think of my business, I've had it for 8.5 years. We have a really strong foundation. We have a good team. We have systems. I'm ready to scale the business. This is like live mentoring. What would what kind of feedback or advice would you give to really help go that next level and scale?
Yeah, I think it ties in to the conversation we had earlier, which is really carving out some time to create that vision. So that vision just doesn't always come to us as like, this realization as we're driving in the car or we're in the shower. I mean, sometimes that's when our most creative moments can happen, as we both know. But the reality is too often we don't spend enough time in strategic mode. So I would encourage people to literally on their calendar, carve out time alone in strategic mode and time with their team in strategic mode. And, get huge white marker boards, or we get those huge Post-it note sheets when we do our company retreats. We put them all over the room. We've got different colored markers and, we're throwing out all kinds of ideas together and really building a plan for where do you want to see your business grow, and really saying, no idea is too crazy for the sake of this brainstorm.
Right.
No idea will be, poo-pooed, we call it, and, shot down.
Right.
And putting it all out there and just, really having those moments and those opportunities to think big, and then honing in on once you can do all that work and then nothing happens from it. Sometimes people come back from a company retreat, they have all these amazing ideas, and then they sit on Post-it notes for years.
Right.
So then what's the next step is that you need to spend some time on your team, again, in strategic mode, where you're then working on a plan. Hey, what part of this plan are we going to execute this year? What is this going to look like from a budgetary standpoint, building out the numbers, building out the marketing strategy, and really getting to work on it to bring it to fruition, because it doesn't happen on its own.
Right. So basically it's a get clear on the vision of what scaling really means, right? Because I feel like a lot of people use that word scale and grow.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and it can mean so many different things to different companies. And my company, Blue Butterfly, we help people in so many different ways. I mean, from helping a Fortune 500 company to launch pop-up stores all across the country, to helping out an entrepreneur who's ready to launch their second store location. And for them, that's scaling. Going from that, I'm working all hours at my one store to now having a second store where they can't be in both places all at one time. That's a huge leap of faith, and that's a huge step that they're taking. There's fear there, and we have to work through all of that to get to the plan on how are they going to open up that second store.
Right.
So I'm glad you're tapping into that. And for some companies, it might mean that they're going to spend a lot more time or money on research and development, to really hey, we want to, have a second business that has nothing to do with this primary business. Right. Or a retailer who says, hey, I want to add a food and beverage component to my store. So sometimes it's maybe unrelated, or there's a secondary relationship to what their existing business is. But really thinking about, hey, what are the other passions? How do we want to grow revenue? What am I good at? What do I care about? And, just getting super, super creative with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where all the fun happens. I mean, I love, love, love that kind of strategic work.
Right.
Really kind of brainstorming with a person, an entrepreneur or a company, and then going from that brainstorming mode to the operational piece, to the marketing piece, to the strategic piece of moving those plans forward.
Right. Yeah. So it's a big brainstorm, but then you're getting really clear on who's doing what and assigning those things and really moving the channel forward. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
I love podcasts. I love books. You do too. We love learning, right? I just feel like we're constantly learning. What is a book or podcast that you've been consuming that you've been enjoying over the past 30 days?
Okay, so my husband and I are fanatics of a podcast called Bigger Pockets.
Ooh.
It is a real estate podcast. And the amazing thing about it is that I actually found out about this book through Bigger Pockets. So they cover all kinds of business topics, and they have some specific podcasts that are just business podcasts, not real estate.
Oh, okay.
But for any listeners out there who are interested in real estate, and we get a lot of people who ask us because we do own rental properties and our commercial properties. They say, "Oh, I want to get into real estate. What do you recommend?" We always recommend Bigger Pockets. I mean, they have phenomenal resources for anybody interested in getting started in real estate, interested in scaling their real estate. And they're just really great guys. I love their podcast formula. And, we just get a lot of great ideas about business in general, actually, from listening to their podcast.
Okay, I want to close out our conversation with something that I think is going to be an interesting conversation for sure. I say that because I want to talk about social media. You have an almost 19-year-old, Abigail. And I first want to know what social media platform you use the most. If I could guess, I would say Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then
I use the old person platform.
the old person platform, Facebook. Okay. And then what about you call her Abby, right?
Yeah, we call her Abby.
Yeah.
I dabble a little bit in Instagram, but I use Instagram because we use it for our business. And I actually had to stop posting on Instagram for our business because my posts were like Facebook posts. I was putting Facebook posts on Instagram. And we have somebody who is 29 on our team. And she volunteered to do our Instagram posts. And they have tons of emojis and really gorgeous photos and a lot less copy. Okay. My posts were way too data driven and way too much copy and way too much like a post that you would do on a business page for Facebook.
Okay.
So, so I do use Instagram, but Abby's favorite is Snapchat on a daily basis. She's doing that for 12 plus hours a day, and now TikTok, and then her Instagram is on there as well, but that's a lot less time.
Okay. So there will be future Crystal Uncorked episodes about the negative sides of social media, because it's definitely something I'm passionate about. I have a social media business. I teach it from a marketing side. It's a beautiful tool to get the word out there. But there's a lot of negative aspects to social. And have you watched the doc on Netflix, The Social Dilemma?
No, I heard you mention that in your early podcast, and it's been on my to-do list, and I just haven't yet, but you just reminded me. I have got to watch that.
Watch it. A lot of people get really sad after watching it, so just know that.
I know, I'm a little afraid to watch it because, listen, we help people in our business with marketing, and I mean, like you, I struggle with it. It's it's part of what I do on a daily basis. So I'm also a little nervous to watch it, but absolutely I'm going to open my eyes up and see what it has to say, because it's all, part of the discussion today.
It totally is. For me, the most fascinating part is what it's doing to our youth. And so for you having a 19-year-old where you say Snapchat 12 hours a day, do you know what is that how she talks to her friends, or is she finding new content that way too, or how does she use it?
So primarily their relationships on a day-to-day basis are maintained through Snapchat. They generally don't text each other through texting. Again, that's how old people talk to each other, through texting. They communicate through messaging in Snapchat. And, I'm maybe a little less concerned about Snapchat than I am about Instagram and TikTok, because I think Snapchat, there's, rule or it's okay on that platform if you're showing your true self, your raw self before you have makeup on. If you've just been crying over a movie or something, you can take a picture of the tears. So that's a little bit more authentic. What I'm more concerned about, and certainly when she was younger, is Instagram and, now TikTok.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of pressure for these girls to look like models, have bodies that are, a certain way. And I'm concerned that there's over-reliance on their self-worth based on, how many likes they get on a photo. And, there's a lot of concern there. And especially when they're younger, I think that there's they're seeing a lot of older, teenagers posting photos, and they're feeling tempted to post photos that might be more revealing or age inappropriate. And so as much as we were trying to monitor that, and that's definitely what we told her, the only way you can have an Instagram account is if we're monitoring it. At any time we're going to take your phone, we're going to check it.
Okay.
Not just on our phone, but on your phone. And having conversations with her about, how much do you think is too much to show in a photo and things like that. But regardless, it's very, very tough being a parent today, monitoring all that. It's nearly impossible. Kids know how to get around. There's workarounds. They have their own private Instagram accounts. And I don't envy anyone today. And I'm glad that who has a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old or an 11-year-old or 10-year-old. It's starting earlier and earlier. And I'm just relieved that now, at almost 19, she's putting some boundaries around it. And we've had some conversations around, maybe not showing so much skin and bathing suit shots on Instagram. And there's a lot of education you have to do with kids today on the fact that all of these photos can be made public for the rest of your life and you can never get it off the internet.
Right.
So that's a challenge too. And they think, oh, the account's locked, it's safe, but it may not be safe. So
no, because your
tough.
friend who, you have a private account, but you have friends, they know your secret account, and then they have access to that, and then who knows what they were doing with it. And
well, they can take pictures of it on their phone and then put it out to who knows where.
Right.
So it's all very scary as a parent. But on the other hand, I will say that because of her experience, she could step into any organization today and, she was running social media for a gift shop in our local town when she was 13, because she knows how to use the platforms. She knows, how to communicate.
Totally.
So on the other hand, they're learning some really invaluable marketing skills that will transfer to the workplace.
Absolutely.
So that's where I'm so torn.
I know it's it's very weird dynamic with social media, because I agree because there's this side of it that I'm loving, the creativity that is coming out of these kids. I'm majority of my time is spent on TikTok. People would think I'm too old to be on TikTok. It's supposed to be for the youngins, but I really like the content that's being produced there. People are so creative, and I'm just wildly impressed with what they're doing. And when I say kids, I'm saying like probably 18 to 25, that age group is creating some really cool content and really putting themselves out there and have these massive followings. And it's really neat to see what they've been doing from a marketing perspective. I love that you guys, how you work with Abby with social in having those boundaries and asking her those questions, because I really do. You're right. They're going to work around. A parent can be like, oh, you can't go on these platforms or whatever, but like they're going to figure out a way for sure that the parents have no idea how they did it or where to look. Mm-hmm. So just having those open conversations and having her respond and participate, I think is a really smart strategy. How is she when you're asking those questions? Is she like, oh, this is so stupid, we have to talk about this? Or is she open?
Thankfully, I think that we really have a great relationship and an open dialogue. And I tried to create that from an early age. Not to say that she shares everything with her mom, but sometimes she overshares with me. And I'm like, whoa, like, I can't believe what you're telling me. But I never want to discourage that, because it's always been in my heart of hearts my goal that she can tell me anything, and I'm always going to work with her and support her and help her figure things out. So I'd rather have some oversharing than undersharing, and we're just fortunate in that way to have that kind of relationship that we've built.
Yeah, no kidding. That's pretty cool. I know I also don't envy the parents from a social media perspective, and I don't envy the children growing up during this time, because the pressure, like you said, of looking a certain way and responding and being on all the time, like that is so much pressure. I'm really thankful that social came really when I was in college for me. So I got to have like what I call a real childhood of playing out. You get on the bike, you go cruise around, you just got to be home by a certain time, and there's no cell phones and there's no sharing of anything. And it was a really nice, simple time back then.
I mean, I think for them, they think it's just the norm, creating dances on TikTok, that's fun. They go do photo shoots. That's fun.
Right.
I think that maybe the most fascinating thing to me is there's these whole clothing companies that have emerged where it's like a fake outfit almost. You can buy a shirt and pants for like $5 and $10. I mean, it's like the epitome of fast fashion. We're not even talking about outfits that you wear like for a season. We're talking about outfits that you wear literally for one photo shoot and then you throw them away. They're designed for that because they don't want to repeat an outfit and they want to be in the latest trends from, you know, the runway, and now they can be for like $15. So that's really fascinating to me how they, you know, pick out a whole outfit. They go do a photo shoot for 2 or 3 hours, and then it's on their Instagram page.
Wow.
Really different.
I know. It really is.
Like you were saying.
Yeah. And you're right. It is so the norm for them of like, this is what we consider fun now. And it probably sounds so lame to go out on your bike and ride around the neighborhood, you know, like, but you know, I found a lot of joy in that.
Yes. Well, I am concerned about, I mean, talking about your health and fitness has been a theme for today. So, you know, just how are they going to be active when they're doing so much time on computers and social media and things like that. So, you know, there is some concern around the fact that they're not moving around as much as my generation or your generation.
Right, right. And then that's a big concern for me. And then also that expectation of how you're supposed to be and look. And you touched on that too. And it in the Social Dilemma, it talks about that, where people are less likely to go out because they don't feel like they look a certain way. Less dating is happening. Suicide is up, especially in girls. I think this, I should fact check, but around 13. And that's like heartbreaking. I can't believe that is happening. So there has to be something there that we can help with our youth. And I'm kind of on this mission to try to figure that out and put that out there with Crystal Uncorked and anybody who's listening. And there's some great resources out there that I'll link to that are helping. But thanks for sharing your experience with your teenage daughter. And yeah, from a marketing perspective, it's great. But from the teenage perspective, it's a little more challenging. So
definitely.
Patricia, I'm checking my notes because I'm still, you know, this amateur podcast interviewer, but this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for your time.
I have had a total blast with you, and I can't believe that our time's up because it went like 5 minutes. And I feel like there's so much more to say.
Well, no, I've already been like, okay, we have to do another episode because I have so many questions I'm holding back, and it's like, okay, I want to stay on track. I know that you and I, like, we'll schedule like, should we do 30 minutes? Let's just do 60 minutes. And then we end up talking for like 90, sometimes 2 hours. Like, it's easy. We could talk all day. But thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your advice and your stories with my audience. It means the world. Let's do one last cheers.
Oh, I love that. Well, I am just so proud of you. Congratulations on this podcast. I have to tell you, I was blown away when I heard the first podcast. I love the format. You are just like so raw and authentic and sharing all of your entrepreneurship and just you as a person. So I know this podcast is going to totally take off. And congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. Cheers. All right, everybody. I am going to link to Patricia in the show notes. You'll be able to learn more about her and her company, Blue Butterfly. And Patricia, again, thank you so much for your time today and for the years that we have spent together. And I can't wait to be partying in NYC with you, hopefully sooner than later.
I wanted to say on a final note, because I do love giving back so much, I would love to hear from anybody out there who has questions about business. If you're struggling with goal setting or where you need to go with your business, like, do not hesitate. Please send me an email. Get in touch with me through our website. Reach out to me through Facebook or Instagram. You know, I'd love to give you some free advice, or just, you know, maybe you need a little bit of support for where you're at in your business right now, because I do love giving back. So I'll just put that offer out there.
That is a massive offer. Anybody who's listening, take her up on that. And now you're going to be flooded, Patricia. I act like I have millions of listeners, but seriously, I'm not kidding. That's a huge thank you for offering that to my listeners. You are a wealth of information and inspiration, and that is really huge. So thank you. I will link to all of that. I appreciate you and your time, and I love you so much. This has been amazing. On the next episode of Crystal Uncorked, I'm talking about 3 things that just didn't work out for me yet. And I got some funny stories to tell that I think you guys will enjoy. So I will see you on the next CU. Patricia, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Are you on Instagram? I'd love to see pictures of you listening to the show, a screenshot of your favorite episode, and or your favorite wines. Share them with me. Just follow and tag at Crystal Uncorked. I can't wait to see you there. All right, I'll see you on the next CU. Okay, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what? Let's pause this for 1 second.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I tried to tell as many people as possible, do not call during this time.
I love that. That's a landline, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Or,
Who was that? Me.
There. Somebody's watching thinking, what? Was that phone plugged in?
Yeah, right?